Hello there and welcome. This is Network Africa on Channels Television with me, Cynthia Are. In order to deal with the ever-present security threat posed by Al-Shabaab, Kenya's government has announced major changes in its administrative and security personnel with a clear focus on tackling the worsening insecurity. According to the Interior Ministry, that's Joseph Nkaserai, these changes will strengthen efforts to combat the threat of terrorism and the creeping threat of violent extremism. The Interior Cabinet Secretary and Inspector General of Police made the changes which you can see on your screen yesterday, saying they will be held accountable for any problems in their regions. The changes brought about confusion in the service as some of the officers who were last week deployed by outgoing Deputy Inspector General of Police, Grace Kanaidi, were left out or replaced. Most of the police commanders were not moved. Now, as regards these changes you're seeing right there, you can see that there's a new Nairobi police chief. There's also a new Mombasa police chief. There's a new county commissioner and also county commissioners for Mandera and also Garissa, as well as Wajir regions, which are very close to the Somalia border. Now, we're still staying in Kenya, and the chairman of the Kenya National Union of Teachers, that's KNUT, says the country's teachers will not return to the classrooms until the government increases their pay as ordered by a recent court ruling. Mudzo Nzikli says President Uhuru Kenyatta's administration has yet to show any commitment or the political will to meet teachers' demands despite repeated warnings from the teachers' union. A court ordered the teachers to be awarded a 50 to 60% pay increase, but the government says it cannot afford that increase at the moment. Supporters of the government asked the teachers to give the administration time to come up with the help or the funds to help meet their demands, and they called on the union's leadership to negotiate with the government to end the strike. But Nzili disagrees, saying the government has been aware of their demands since January but failed to budget for it. For more on these developments concerning the reshuffle as well as the teacher strike, we go live to Washington, where Kenya expert and also presenter for the Africa 54 program, Vincent Makori, is standing by. Vincent, thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thank you.
Now, based on your sources on the ground in Kenya, how are Kenyans reacting to the reshuffle?
Well, Kenyans are not surprised. One, because after the appointment of the new minister, Joseph Nkaserai, they expected changes to happen because the reason why the previous Minister Olelenku was fired was because what appeared to be his inability to contain these attacks. So they did expect some kind of changes, not necessarily the extent to which they have occurred. But something else, Kenyans are not expecting so much from these changes because they believe that there's a systemic problem. The government is grappling, trying to come up with some strategy. So whether reshuffling will be a solution or not, they are skeptical. They're waiting to see whether it will make a difference. What will really show that this means something is if Kenyans can go for months without having any attack anywhere in the country.
Now, at this point, I have to ask, are there any other plans in place to counter the Al-Shabaab threats besides what we saw happen yesterday?
You know, the government says it has some other plans. What it means basically is that whatever strategy they've been using, they're going to try and improve on that. The key is, of course, intelligence collection and sharing, because Al-Shabaab is not an external threat anymore. It is an internal threat, that some of those recruits are citizens who are within the borders of Kenya. They're not necessarily foreigners. So the challenge is, how do you beef up this effort of collecting intelligence among your citizens and being able to effectively contain those attacks before they happen? So what they're doing is to build that strategy and create some kind of community system where people within the neighborhoods, within the communities, can be used to volunteer information that can help the authorities to track down some of the suspects.
And just before I let you go, Vincent, are you hearing anything about whether the government now plans to meet the teachers' union halfway especially when we remember that these demands have been approved by a court, even though the government says it can't afford to increase the salaries of the teachers at this time?
You know, it looks like in the long run, the government will have to kind of meet this teachers' union halfway, because the court has ruled that the teachers deserve the 50 to 60% increase. The government says it cannot afford, but the government knows it cannot avoid. It cannot run away from the reality. The government will be happy and eager to meet the teachers' union halfway if they're willing to bring down their demand. But the teachers are adamant because they feel this has been long coming. It's not something that happened yesterday. It's been years since the teachers got any significant salary increase. So the challenge here will be whether the teachers are willing to back down, given that it's a court ruling. They see this as a great opportunity for them to get what they've been wanting for a long time. And they say the government can afford it. They don't see why the government cannot afford it.
Well understood. Thank you so much, Vincent. It's been a pleasure, as always. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome.
The Voice of America's Vincent McCory. He is a Kenya expert speaking to us from Washington.